Hello, and a very warm welcome to you. My name is Roger Firman from the UK Association for Accessible Formats, and I'm particularly delighted to welcome Sharon. Sharon, a very warm welcome to you, particularly as you have had such a long and involved association with UKAAF right from the start. But we'll get to that later. As Managing Director of Peer, perhaps you could tell us what attracted you there in the beginning.
Uh, Thanks, Roger. Good to be here. In fact, I wasn't attracted to peer at all. I was dragged in off the street, basically. I had an association with the founder's partner at the time. We were working elsewhere together, and peer needed someone who had some of my skills. So they asked me to get on board, and yeah, I did. So that was back in 1999, and I first joined as a lackey to the project manager of a significant education project that Peer was managing at the time, and now I'm the sole owner and director. So there we go.
Fantastic. And all these years later, fantastic.
Yeah.
So for those who might be unfamiliar with Peer, I wonder if you could say something about the history of the business, how it has changed, and the current focus of your work.
Sure. So when Peer first started, it was back in 1985, and it was an old-fashioned 80s kind of cooperative. I think it was, the uniform was dungarees and DM boots, and they were basically a small typesetting operation back in the days when. Big litho, big web prints were done from litho printed plates, if you like, and so they would set out in intricate detail these huge bits of text on bits of plastic, and they would go off to the web printers and get printed. So that's how it started. It then got into doing a bit more publishing, and through that gained its association with the Radio 4 program and the handbook, the annual handbook that was published at that point. And the handbook was obviously published in print, but they wanted it published in simultaneously in Braille, large print and audio. So I think Peer has the actual UK record for the first book published simultaneously in all its formats. Harry Potter came later, but that was the first fictional book. So that's how Peer started on its journey into accessible formats. And as time went by, the Peer done various things in terms of selling hardware, wrote Braille Maker translation software. So did some things like set up David Blunkett's Braille transcription unit when he was in the Home Office. Also set up a similar thing in the Welsh government. So did those kind of things, but we've over the years then moved away from providing technology and that sort of stuff, realizing that actually the transcription needed quite a lot of expertise, and checking a machine and software at people wasn't necessarily always the right thing to do. So now we focus solely on transcription, and yeah, we're busier than ever.
Fantastic. Yes, I do remember the days of back then with former people involved. So that's lovely, and lovely to hear about the journey. So from your perspective, what would you say have been the important developments during your time at Peer?
So, I mean, plainly, the development of technology and accessible versions of it has been absolutely brilliant. I think, there's no doubt that even though we're a long way from being perfect, the world and a lot of the information in it is far more accessible to a wider number of people with a visual impairment than it's ever been, and so that I think is probably the most important change. It's after all why UKAAF exists, and why Peer exists. I think one thing I would say though is that I always feel like there's always a lot more print that's out there that isn't being done in an accessible format as well. So I think there's plenty of room to manoeuvre. But yeah, that's been a real exciting part of working at Peer is seeing how technology has really helped to make perhaps working life as well as leisure a little more accessible to people who are blind.
Yes, and I think I'm right in saying, Sharon, that one of the other things you've done since your time at Peer is to actually grow the business, haven't you, in terms of your employees and what you now do, as opposed to it's been evolutionary, hasn't it, over the last 20 years?
Yeah, and I think it's been a quite an exciting journey. Not all of it as comfortable as I would like the journey to be. It's been a bit hair raising, and I can probably blame some of my grey hairs on that journey. But yeah, so I think we were a bit of a one-trick pony when I first became MD. We'd probably narrowed a little bit too much our offering, and so yeah, we were a team of about 10 when I took over. We're now a team of 25, so that's pretty good, steady growth, and we've managed to maintain the team through the recent COVID issues as well, which has been brilliant. Obviously, there's been some support from the government, but I think also there's been a really good team spirit that's it's really brought us together as a team, I think, and I think adversity does that in an organisation, as long as you've got the right people and as long as you've got the right ethos. But yeah, I think the issues that we've faced over the years have brought us together. And actually, I know I'm long in the tooth in terms of Peer, but I've got a number of colleagues who are also there, either before me or joined shortly after me, and we're still all here. So so I think that probably shows that we've probably got the right mix of hard work and well-being support.
Yes, that is great, and it's better to have a steady growth, isn't it, rather than one day you've got 10 people and tomorrow you've got 25. But the gradual increase and development, and as you rightly made reference to, retaining staff, which businesses prosper from, really. So that's fantastic to know that you, yes, as you mentioned, that you still have colleagues there who were there before you and are still there. And and as you say, adversity. I mean, there's been plenty of that with the pandemic and how things were going to work or not work, and the challenges and the opportunities and all things like that. Being based in Wales as you are, have you found that the increasing use of the Welsh language is having an impact upon what you are being asked to provide at all?
Not particularly. I think part of the issue with that is that, of course, technology hasn't necessarily kept up with the increase in Welsh language provision. So I think schools and individuals have to make do in other ways. So that that there isn't a massive increase in the ask for Welsh medium Braille. But I think there's definitely an increase in the requirement for Welsh medium large print, but I think there's just an increase in general in terms of the requirement for large print, naturally so. But it is exciting as a Welsh speaker myself to be in a Wales that seems to embrace more and more that culture and the sort of the language. I think I've always been very clear that being able to speak those two languages, English and Welsh. I know I don't always sound like I can speak good English, but anyway, being able to speak those two languages really has helped in terms of, just having a go at other languages. I'm not a great academic, so learning other languages doesn't come easily to me necessarily, but I do find that it gives me the confidence to have a go and stuff. So I think it's just opens you up to have a second language, and and I'm proud to see that Welsh education is really on the increase, particularly in South Wales.
And the government is making more requirement that teachers, for instance, do have some skills in Welsh language, don't they? More and more.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing is that whereas when I was in school, which obviously was many moons ago, but if you went to an English school, there was very little Welsh, and so that it was, the Welsh that you did do would be just in the one lesson. I think these days, particularly in primary schools, there's a real kind of mix, and everyone gets involved, and they will do a lot of their incidental language, kind of the phrases that they use in the classroom, when the teacher says ready, instead of saying ready, they'll say barod, and everyone goes barod, and and it's so they use an awful lot of incidental Welsh in primary schools now, in a way that just wasn't happening years ago. So I think that's nice. There's a more natural way to approach having a second language.
And just introduce it in that very natural kind of way, that where people can pick up the odd phrases and words, and in that kind of environment where they might not even necessarily be aware they're doing it. They're just learning, but
that's right.
They're absorbing it by just natural daily use and what's around them. So that's yes, it's fantastic, and it really is great to see that the language is being used more and more, and even in parts of Wales where people might have thought, oh, there's not much Welsh spoken here now, there's more than I think people think. So that's fantastic. So that's really terrific. So from what you experience on a daily basis, do you detect that digital provision is growing, or do you find that what might have been thought of as the more established provision of Braille, large print and audio are still important, or is digital kind of king nowadays?
No, I think it's definitely as kind of bigger corporate organizations get to grips with perhaps automating their accessibility functions. There's bound to be an increase, and I myself use digital files far more often than I use paper documents these days, and I think that's a very common thing.
Yes.
But at the moment, I think, because, if you like, accessible formats are playing so much catch up in terms of their availability compared to print documents. I think we're still catching up, so I don't think they're going away just yet. There's still plenty of print being produced, as I said earlier, that's not actually available as an accessible format. So I think there's plenty of catching up still to go for accessible formats, and I don't see it slowing down at the moment.
Yes, interesting. Thank you. So turning to your long involvement with UKAAF, how did all that start?
Well, I think obviously the history of UKAAF is that it was formed from the three organisations that previously existed, and Pia had been privileged enough to be part of two of those organisations. One was the anyone can join kind of organisation of the UK Association of Braille Producers, but the other one was BORC, the Braille Association for the UK. We were working on a project that the community thought that we could then usefully contribute to the work of BORC. So we had representation on that group, and so I think it was a natural thing that we might get involved as those three formed the new UKAAF. At that point, I wasn't involved with either of those organisations. There were colleagues representing us separately on those two groups, and I think, I don't know whether it was because the word treasurer was mentioned, but my colleagues decided they didn't want to do it and put me forward instead. So so yes, I obviously was delighted to be asked to join the form, the board, and I've been here ever since. And there's I think I've been we made great progress initially as an organisation. I think there was an awful lot of will in the room, and it was a real privilege to work with some of the colleagues from the old RNIB Centre for Accessible Information, who were absolutely committed to the cause of UKAAF, and we made tremendous progress. But I'm also proud of where we are now, actually, as an organisation. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on. It's different to where we started from, but I think it's like most growing and developing, it's positive, and will only kind of stand us in better stead as an organisation of the future.
Yes, I mean that's great. I mean, we certainly have great respect for people, what they've what people with different contributions have made in the past, and it adds up to a story, doesn't it? A history. And things develop, they change, they grow, new opportunities come. We might stop doing something, start doing something else, but as long as the direction is forward, and and inevitably, some people people change, situations change, so it's fantastic, and really good to hear your positive view about how things have started, how it's developed, and you can recognize that from your personal perspective, having been involved from the outset, and seen it all, and as you said, pre that with your colleagues. So do you have a view as to where accessible and alternative document creation is leading to better provide information?
Well, I think we've touched on that already
Yeah.
in some respects. In that, I
Mm,
think the
mm,
development uh, of of more automatic ways of creating accessible documents is, I think that's fantastic in terms of um, making it easier for
yeah.
more people
Mm,
to
mm,
provide
mm,
accessible formats.
yeah.
Whereas, of course, it's been a mystery to most people in the
Yeah.
past, and fair enough, because you're not in the past as well. There wasn't the easy route to kind of desktop publishing as well, um, and then that all sort of grew organically without necessarily someone sitting down with people and saying, right, so this is Word. Now this is how you use it. And so, it is, you haven't, there wasn't that, and then there wasn't that learning. And initially, of course, accessibility wasn't necessarily part of the offering either. So, there's all sorts of reasons why um, in the past it hasn't been easy for people to assume that they could put together accessible documents. Um, but hopefully, what's happening now will make it easier.
Mm, mm,
And even if that's not meaning that people are going to be able to produce Braille documents themselves, at least if they're starting with what is generally a more accessible file in the first place,
yeah.
then the rest of it's going to be easier too.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. The whole journey where people can, just by what they normally, they just do naturally, will help in the creation of more and more accessible formats, which is obviously what we all want to see. And it's getting more away from, obviously, the things that used to be the case, to which you referred about, the mystery of all people thinking, what's that? How do you do that? To, oh, well, if I do this, then it will be a step along that road of
mhm,
producing more and more accessible information, which is, great and
mhm.
fantastic. Claire, I'm just wondering, do we have any questions that you?
We do. Can you recall what might have been your greatest challenge at Peer?
Oh, my greatest challenge up here, crikey. Uh, so there have been two things that have proved really challenging. One was actually very early on in my MD role, and one of our customers went into administration, and they just happened to be the biggest customer we had, and that was a really tough time. It was a tough presentation to make to colleagues when kind of I'd worked out the ramifications of it all. But that was one of the occasions that brought us together as a team, and we
Mm,
got through that. But obviously, without doubt, I think any business owner, particularly a small business owner, but actually a lot of businesses will tell you that without doubt, getting through the pandemic has been just the biggest challenge. I think not necessarily. It's just that it went on so long.
yeah.
It wasn't a quick fix. It wasn't a. All right. Well, disaster has struck, so everyone's got to be made redundant. They're you're closing the business, that sort of thing. But it just hit you, and then it just kind of, instead of the knife coming back out, it just kept twisting and turning for such a long time. Um, and all my colleagues had to be ever so patient because as an individual owner of a business, it took time to manage stuff. It took time to work out what the government was telling me, for me
Mm,
to then kind of work that into information that I could share with colleagues, to work out to manage, the various aspects of what we were being told. It was a really difficult time. It's probably the longest 2 years of my life. I'm happy to say things are much better now. But yeah, that's been a really tough gig to get through. But obviously, I know I'm not on my own. I'm just saying, for me, it was personally the biggest challenge.
Yes, these situations, they don't come without cost emotionally and every other way too. So and they are challenging, and it was just the uncertainty of not knowing what was around the corner. When was this all going to end, and what was going to be next on that journey? And you're trying to, you want to run a business, keep things going, and with all the uncertainty around, not easy.
No, and I will just be eternally grateful to all my colleagues for the patience that they showed while I was, doing that stuff. And there was never an occasion when any of them displayed any, angst or frustration with the time I took to get stuff done. So it was brilliant to be surrounded by such supportive colleagues. But obviously it was a very lonely journey a lot of the time.
Yes. Well, glad things have developed since then. Claire, do we have another question?
We do. When you're not at PEER or involved with UKAAF, are there any hobbies that you turn to for relaxation?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. One of the things that I've been absolutely delighted to have added to my life is dog, and now dogs. When I was never allowed to have a dog because my working life balance was so poor. So I had to get my life sorted before I was allowed to get a dog. Anyway, what I did instead was I got a dog that I could bring to the office with me. So that's been brilliant. Dilys is actually on the Meet the Team page of PEER's website. She has an official role. It was just bringing her to the office was great, because I would take her for a walk. I'd take her for a walk before work, I'd take her for a walk during work, and then I'd take her for a walk in the evening as well. And just having that, I don't have children, and having to think about someone else and have to do things like go for a walk, just to look after their well-being is just makes you, I think, just take your foot off the misery pedal, and if you're ever in the miseries, go and take a dog for a walk. It's just a lovely thing to do. Well, except when they're naughty, which Dilys often is, actually, particularly when it comes to picnics. She's very fond of Jaffa cakes.
Oh.
Fantastic. So no. So that's it's not much of a hobby, but it's one of the things I really love doing.
It's fantastic, Sharon, to hear that, and so much joy that has obviously brought you and brings you, and lovely to thank you so much for sharing that with us. Really. So before concluding this webinar, could I mention that on July the 5th there will be another one, and I will be in conversation with Judith Furs, who runs her own transcription business, her own Braille transcription business, and naturally enough has a lifelong connection with Braille, so we very much look forward to that. And I would like to say in closing that you, Sharon, have been extremely generous in your support of this new venture of webinars, and I really thank you for that. And it's been lovely to have you here today and to be able to be in conversation with you.
Oh, thanks, Roger. It's I think it's the webinars have been great, and I thank you for getting them up and running. Thank you.
Thank you too. So could I thank Sue, Claire and Emma for their behind the scenes help with these webinars. And on that note, until next time, goodbye from us all. And as I say, goodbye till next time. Goodbye.
Thanks, Roger.